Hi there, fans of Living Your Best Life Coaching and the Gwenne Effect, and welcome to this latest episode of the Flip the Script podcast. And today I've got with me the lovely Dr. Caitlin McDonald. So let me tell you a little bit about Caitlin, and then we'll tell you why we've got her here. And she's going to tell us her story of how she's flipped the script on her cancer diagnosis and cancer journey and what that's led to for her. So Caitlin is a Leith-based resilience coach, helping high-performing teams and individuals find their inner reserves of courage in these complicated times. And we can all agree they're complicated times. That's why we need things like Flip the Script to combat some of the social media and everything else that's going on in the world. In a time of increasing volatility, we all need tools for surviving and thriving. She works regularly for working with cancer, supporting people to remain in and return to work following a cancer diagnosis, coaching for creatives, empowering everyone working in the creative industries to achieve fulfilling careers, and creative co-working space, I'll try and pronounce this correctly, Corvidium Creative, adding well-being and creative performance growth to the community. Now, I managed Corvidium and stumbled on performance, but hey, that's life. So that's how you know it's real and live.
Absolutely.
And unrehearsed.
Well, I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being my latest guest on the show. It is up until now, it's been a fairly sporadic and spontaneous journey with the podcast. And now I've got people lining up to tell their story. So I'm excited that you're the first of this next cohort, if you like, Caitlin. So yeah. I love what you shared with me, particularly because I'm all about heart-centered work and heart-based work. And you'll see sometimes when I talk about things that are close to my heart that I get that kind of bodily response. So those that are used to watching me will be used to that. And if you're not, if this is your first time watching, that's what that's all about. So it's a good sign. It's a really positive thing. So I love what you said in your bio that you sent to me, is that, you know, reminding us that courage comes straight from the heart. And literally the word derives from cor, which is the Latin for heart. And often when I see the word courage, I kind of translate it in my head sometimes to courage, like the age of the heart, if you like, and kind of going into French. And you've said the early definitions of courage meant one's vital force and spirit, vitality and life force, or one's true thoughts and intentions. And I know that you know deep in your bones how a catastrophe can transform into an opportunity to explore personal growth, uncovering hidden reserves of resilience and inner strength. And so that's what we're going to talk about, because that's what Flip the Script is all about. And when those things, like you say, that feel like, you know, a life-changing, heart-stopping moment, and they feel like in the time, I guess, at the moment, they feel like the worst thing possible, and you know, it's, you know, not something you would have wished for yourself. It's only afterwards, in what I kind of call a reverse treasure trail, we can see, you know, the gifts that have come from it, or the growth or the expansion, or something else that you've got that's come from that. And I get a big yes for that you couldn't possibly have anticipated at the time. And you know, you'd probably have rather had it an easier way, but then again, this is your soul's journey. This is what you signed up for. So hopefully you're on board with that and happy to go with those kind of directions with me.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about, you know, your diagnosis, and let's begin the story, and then let's go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was living my best life. I was having a wonderful time. At the time, I was working full time as a researcher at the University of Edinburgh. I was helping creatives to do more with data in their practice. And we were doing some academic research about that. And we'd funded a whole bunch of creative projects, and it was really great. And then I was like, I'm really enjoying being back in academia again, but I'm thinking about moving back into think tanks, which is where I'd come from just before that, you know, and I had a very glamorous life flying around the world and talking to CEOs and like people that worked in high powered places and in government and industry and things. And then about 3 months before I was about to turn 39, I found a few months before that, I'd found a lump, and I was like, well, it's probably just some swollen lymph nodes from an infection. And kind of everyone I spoke to in the medical profession was like, you're so young, it's probably not cancer, it's probably fine, but we'll send you to the breast unit anyway, just to have a check. Yeah. And then The moment that I knew I wasn't walking out of there without something bad happening was when they did a little test, and then I went into another room to do something else. And when I came back into the first room, they were all wearing these like bibs, and I was like, oh, this is not going to be a good day. So they
something
did the
shifted here.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the atmosphere had really changed, and they were still only in the test phase, but you could tell that they knew they needed to do the test for a reason. And when they had done the test, they sent me back upstairs to talk to the surgeon. And she looks at me and she goes, "You have breast cancer." She's like, "I can't tell you what kind yet, but I'm looking at this, and it's very clear to me that, you know, this is definitely a breast cancer." And of course, nobody wants to hear that news at any age, but it was particularly surprising on that particular day. And it was so surprising, in fact, that my parents, when I called them later to tell them, they didn't really want to believe it. They were like, but they're not sure. You know, they have to do more tests. And I'm like, it's true.
Yeah, they can't hold on to the positive stuff, like, oh,
Exactly.
there's a chance it might not be.
Yeah. And I was like, no. They're testing to see what kind it is, not to see if it is cancer. And so it really took a lot of, it took a lot to get through that. And yes, it was a difficult journey, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe now when I think back, like 3 years ago on this day, I wouldn't have had any eyebrows.
Yeah.
I would have been lying in my hospital bed, probably having just woken up from having to go there in the middle of the night and have them check me over, because there was one time over the summer when I got really ill. Any eyelashes, and like my face was all puffy because I got a big rash, and it was just not a very good day. And I remember actually taking a selfie that day and being like, hold on to this, because it's the worst day of your life, and when you look back, you're gonna want to remember how awful this was. Which was true.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, yes, it's the worst day of your life, but I guess what you could also say to yourself is, it can only get better from here.
Oh, exactly. That was kind of the thinking was, and at that point we kind of knew that the treatment was working well. It was just that I was having a bit of a dip in,
the response.
Yeah, and actually that takes me into the artwork that I'm going to talk about, which is, and I'll describe it in a bit more detail, but the name of the artwork is Picture Your Poisons. And we called it that, not because we want people to not use the medications that are given to them, but because there's a kind of old pharmacological principle, which is the difference between poison and medicine is in the dosage. And these are medicines, like when they give you chemotherapy, you have to have 2 nurses standing there who check that you are who you say you are, just in the same way that they do the cross check on the plane to like make sure that everything's good, right? Like because they are so dangerous that they don't want anyone taking them by accident, or flim-flamming their way in there. You don't know why anybody would do that, because they're
I know who would want to, but yeah.
Exactly. But so they're they are poisons. They're literally poisons, and they're trying to kill the cancer before it kills you. That's right.
Yes.
So it's pretty grim to go through that experience. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit more, because you've opened the conversation there about your the creative project that came out of it. So at what point did that come along? I guess that was a bit of a turning point. And I think you said, from my understanding, you obviously already were a creative person. So was that something that was offered to you, or does it come along by chance? Did you instigate it? How did that come into your life?
Yeah, so I've always thought of myself as a creative writer. So that's something that I practice every day, and is a really big part of my life. And I was very lucky. So on the project that I was working with at the time, which was we were working as academic researchers, but one of the other researchers on the project was also a glassmaker. So that was her creative practice. And I was about halfway through treatment, and she sends me this text. Her name is Inge Panneels. She's a glassmaker, and she sends me this text message, and she says, "Stop me if this is too weird," because obviously, like, we mostly see each other in the office and things. But she says, "Would you like to take a glass cast of your breast before you have surgery?"
Okay.
And I was like, "Absolutely, yes, let's do it. Like, let's go, bring it on." And she had offered that to other friends of hers. Other friends of hers who'd had breast cancer treatment surgery before, and not all of them were up for it. So I was really happy to do it and excited about it. And then we were talking about it, and we were like, well, are we just doing this as like a memento for me of this time, or is this something that we want to turn into an artwork that we exhibit? And because of the program that we worked for, which was about bringing data into people's creative practice, we were actually able to get a bit of funding to do more than one cast. So what we ended up doing was a series of casts, each of which was about the different types of breast cancer treatment I received, and then the things that made them into treatments, like how they'd become about as treatments. So like one of my favorites is one of the kinds of treatments called paclitaxel is made from the bark of the Pacific yew tree.
Oh, wow.
And for a while, it was when they found that this would work, so of course in Britain, the yew tree is known as a sacred plant, and you often find it in churchyards. And it turns out that the churches were built where the yew trees were already planted, because those are sacred groves and things,
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway, we found that the yew tree worked, the bark of the tree worked really well for killing particular kinds of cancer cells. And for a while in the 1970s, they were harvesting so much of the yew tree that the trees became endangered as a result of this. So they were like saving loads of people, but the trees were dying. But they've now found a way, thankfully, to manufacture it synthetically. So all the trees are safe. So everything's good.
Yeah. And so you mentioned your friend asking if you wanted to, preserve your bust basically for posterity, kind of thing. And create that cast of your bust. And I love the link to the churchyards as well, and to the sacred spaces as well. I'm sure we'll come back to that. We'll circle back to that in some way. That's how the magic works. That's how the Gwenne effect works. So we'll just see where we go with that. But yeah, tell us a bit more then about that process itself. And I guess, it sounds like it did expand into something else for you in terms of, what it then... what it allowed for you, what it alleviated. You can put it into your own words, but yeah, tell us a bit more how that process went, and then what emerged out of that.
Yeah, 100%. So, we talked about a number of different ways that we might do the cast, but in the end, what we landed on was one cast for each of the treatments. So I had 7 different kinds of treatment. I was one of the first people. I was the first person in the ward that I was being treated on to have immunotherapy that wasn't for breast cancer treatment, that wasn't part of a clinical trial. So I was the very first one. So when I would call in to do my pre-chemotherapy checks, they'd be like, "Oh, it's you," because they knew that I was the one that was getting... You're a bit of a pioneer. And now dozens of people have had it since then in that ward. And of course, all around the world, hundreds and millions of people have had it. But it was a unique experience to go through that at that time. And in terms of the glass casting, so I think we started doing it probably in August, which was towards the end of the treatment I was having. We decided to do one cast per type of treatment. And so the process of casting glass, you make a mold of whatever it is that you want to cast. You could cast an ice cream, you could cast a pillow, whatever it is. So in this case, it was my breast. So we made a mold. We used dental alginate to make the mold. So the stuff that you go in when they're like making a mold of your teeth. Yeah. That's what we used. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we used that on my chest. And then from that, we made another plaster cast. And then from that, we made a rubber mold that could be used repeatedly. So, and then basically you use wax, or we're using what's called a lost wax process. So you use wax to make each of the casts, and then you use that to make the plaster mold that the glass goes in. And then because the plaster is heat resistant, so it can stand up to the heat of the kiln. So you put chunks of wax into the mold, and then you put that in the kiln. And then for several days, it has to be in there to melt in the way that you want it to take on the shape of the cast that you have.
I'm glad you said about the kiln, because I was thinking that earlier on, and I was thinking, that's pottery, but so it's a kiln for firing glass as well then.
That's right. So in this case, we're using cast glass. So unlike blown glass, where
that's where it was getting.
So that's often, I think, when people are thinking about glass, they're often thinking of blown glass. But in this case, we're using cast glass. So it's very much like the process that you would use for doing pottery.
Right. Yeah. Not that I ever do pottery, but again, like a lot of these shows where you watch like the Sew and Bee or the Great Pottery Throwdown, it's like no intention of ever doing it, but I like watching other people do it, or cooking shows where you think, I'm never making that thing, but it's nice to watch you doing it.
Yeah, well, and it was wonderful. I felt like an apprentice glassmaker, because of course I never would have gotten...
You're learning a lot, I guess, in the process.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, mostly I learned how to mix plaster, because you'd be surprised at how much of making cast glass is just making plaster molds over and over and over, like endless plaster molds. So a lot of it was very plaster based, which surprised me. That was definitely a surprise. But so we really enjoyed the process of doing them. There were some hairy moments. So like there was one time when I went to Inge's studio. So she lives in the Borders. So I took the train down there, and then it was a really hot day, and I was like not feeling very well. And I kept telling me like, Inge, I feel like I'm going to pass out. So I'd have to like lie down on the floor of the studio, and then she's like working away. And then the next day it turned out that, and I didn't know this, that I was so anemic that I was supposed to have a blood transfusion. So no wonder I was feeling like passed out in the heat. So that was all just part of the experience. And I think those kind of things, you're making this this project, and it becomes so important to have something that is not being a cancer patient, and it's just a way of like having something to do that isn't just being sick all the time. And that became really important to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when you were talking about the 7 types of, not 7 types of treatment, but the 7 stages really, and we're talking about you being a bit of a pioneer, and that in itself was courageous to volunteer to go through that, because I guess you were one of the very first by the sounds of things. So,
well, it wasn't exactly, I mean, of course you can always decline treatment if you wish, but that was the treatment that was recommended to me. So
but you still had to agree to it and say, I'm happy to not be a guinea pig, but to be one of the first to do that from the sounds of things. So and then, like you say, you were learning a lot about the casting process and everything else, and going through some really uncomfortable times in that, and through. Was there anything? I'm going to say, was there anything that made you laugh through it? Like, okay, you were sort of feeling like, I need to lie down because I feel crap. But was there any surprising, like, fun moments as well?
Oh my gosh! I mean, I think almost everything was you had to laugh, or else it would just
if you didn't laugh, you'd cry.
Were difficult and sad, and or like you'd get into an argument with your family or whatever. But so it's like one of the funniest. I mentioned I had like a rash on my face, right?
Yeah.
So I personally thought that was hilarious. Like, it was very itchy and very uncomfortable, but I also thought it was really, really funny, because nobody could figure out why it was happening. And then for a brief moment they were like, well, it might be lupus. And I was like, you mean like the joke on Seinfeld? And they were like, don't worry, it's never lupus, like the joke on House. So all of that kind of thing became very, very funny.
Okay. So and it's a bit like kind of graveyard humor, or even in grief, or in funerals and these types of things. Like there's a laugh or a smile or something that can alleviate the moment as well, and it's like you're laughing or crying through your tears sometimes, and those sort of things. So it sounds like that kind of, and I guess I know that like doctors and these sort of people, I think they've got I know, is it Adam Kay, the writer who wrote like this is gonna work and things like that. I've watched the series of that, and I think sometimes doctors have the deepest, darkest sense of humor, because they've got to have to cope with what they're saying as well. So it sounds like that was not just a coping mechanism, but also helped you to get through things.
Back from things as well, so you don't have any eyebrows, right? And then you're making jokes about the way that your face looks, and then eventually they come back and you feel a bit better about life. Or like you're balding in the back. My dad was laughing because he was like, well, finally you know what it feels like.
You know how it feels to be me. Yeah, exactly. And I guess as well, the process of growing back your eyebrows, I'm sure they don't come back overnight, like beautifully manicured eyebrows. I'm sure they come like sprouting and kind of.
Well, do you know, actually mine came back pretty quickly, and they were pretty, like they look the way they do now. So
okay.
So, and I would say, like, I think partly because mine are so dark, that for me, even more than losing my hair, my eyebrows being gone was like that I found very difficult. But I was very relieved when they came back and everything was fine again, so.
Yeah. So I can understand now, especially you mentioned beforehand, before we went live or, started the recording, that you'd also watched one of my other Flip the Script podcast with Marie, and Marie's got alopecia, and she was bravely telling her story, and of course she has issues with her eyebrows. I think she gets her eyebrows and eyelashes done, etc., to make her feel good, even when she's not wearing a wig and what have you. So I can see now, especially why there would be that link between the two of you. You would have that commonality there as well.
And her creativity.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, in the creativity, I was just about to say, was there anything else? But like, as you say, the creativity, so that kind of creative spark and the creative juices. So, tell us more about that journey in terms of how you've flipped the script now. So as well as making that, the bust, if you like, the cast of your bust, has there been other creative projects since then that were inspired by that journey, or where did things go with that?
Yeah, so we were really lucky. We were able to exhibit Picture Your Poisons twice here in Edinburgh. And so one of them was through the Visual Arts Scotland exhibition in 2024, which is their centenary exhibition. So that was a really big, wonderful show with hundreds of other artists involved. And that was lovely to be part of that. And then in the same year, it also went into the Science Festival, which, as you know, has thousands of people attending. And so we were really, really lucky to have lots of people get a chance to see the artwork, to speak to us when we were there, or to read some of the information that we'd assembled about cancer and its treatments, and, thinking about their own journeys. So, that was really moving and special experience. And then since then, we've also been trying to make digital models of the casts, because as much as I love them, it always makes me terrified whenever we exhibit them, because they are made of glass, so especially at the Science Festival, you have like all these little kids running around, and I'm like, someone is going to knock one over. Someone's going to get injured, so like it was terrifying to be in the space when you can see people like moving around it. They're beautiful, but I always get very nervous. And also you get a very limited amount of people can see them. Whereas if you have some 3D models of them, you could put them online and then anybody could see them anytime. So we've been trying to do that, but it turns out that glass is one of the most technically difficult substances to make in 3D modeling. So it's been a slow road, but we have managed to do one. So we got to exhibit that a few weeks ago at In Space, which is the art exhibition space that's just underneath the office where we work, and we had a big open day for that, and a big research showcase that had that work alongside other exhibitions that were about the work of the Institute for Design Informatics where I work. So so we've enjoyed that very much, and we're going to continue trying to get like a full set of those and then put them in probably the library as an archive, so that'll be quite nice.
I love that. Like, so a real legacy sort of thing going into the library and an archive. And also it sounds like that in itself, as you say, is like a kind of pioneering process, or solving another problem, because with the things with the glass where it's hard to make it in the digital media, so you've got one, and then it's like give me a yes for this. It's like, it's almost like that kind of determination of right, okay, well, we're going to overcome this step, and now we're going to, we're focused on what we want to do, and we'll just be creative in how we want to achieve that, or how we're going to overcome these obstacles. Does that sound?
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, it's like I love that project so much, and every time we exhibit it, someone has something to share about their experience, whether it's a cancer journey of their own, or their concerns about the future, or in the case of the most recent exhibition, almost everybody attending the exhibition was a designer, or like a person who works in the arts. And so they were like, how did you do this? Because they just like they knew the technical difficulties of doing the 3D modeling part. So, so there's always something to connect to with people. So I really love that experience, and I'm really looking forward to getting more people to see it and have their own experiences with it as well.
And you mentioned as well, obviously connecting with people, and there being a lot of like moving stories and moving moments. So is there anything particular that stands out to you, that either you sharing your story or someone else sharing theirs with you, that's really been profound for you? And
hugely so. And I think I'd like to connect that a little bit with the work that I do at Working with Cancer.
Of course, please do.
And we help people get back to work after having a cancer diagnosis, or remain in work. We also work with people who are in stage 4 cancer but are still working. We work with people who are working as carers, or caring for someone at home. They're working while doing that. And I think often other people who are not experiencing cancer underestimate the amount of importance that work has in people's lives, and how much it gives them the opportunity to do what I was talking about before, which is to do something that isn't being ill, and then it's a real sense of meaning for people. Like, everyone that I work with is really passionate about getting back to work. And I think sometimes people are like, man, if I had the opportunity to not work, I would definitely not do it. And it's like, well, I bet that isn't true, because often for people, there's a huge sense of achievement, self-worth, their sense of who they are is really involved in their work. And so it's very important for people to have something that they can do within and after cancer to get back to that sense of normality, and to reconnect with their sense of who they are. And just as we've been talking about today, often that changes. So people's priorities often change. I've heard that obviously from myself. I know that personally, but also from the people I work with. They discover new priorities. They maybe want to work a bit differently than they did before. They have different ways that they want to think about their long-term priorities. So those kinds of things can often really shift. And it's a real gift to be part of people's journeys in that way, to enable them to have that space to open up about it. Because often I think, and you'll know yourself as a coach, as much as your family and your friends love you, and as much as your community rallies around you during a difficult period, they don't always understand exactly what you want out of the situation. So they may be making assumptions about things, or they might have a way that they want you to be.
Yeah.
And when you're like, actually, I want to be a new person and I want to be slightly different. And coaching opens up that space for them to explore who they want to be now. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and something else that you said there, because what you're saying there is that like it's almost freeing to them, and it's allowing them to flip the script in a way, because you know, I'm sure you get a whole new perspective on life, of, well, okay, you know, especially if you've got people maybe stage 4 or what have you, that are like, well, maybe they want to leave a legacy, or they want to do something that they've never done, or you know, some of those things. So some of that might be a work project, or it might be something else. So as you say, there'll be a whole host of reactions and responses, but I guess and everyone's valid, everyone's journey is their own, but I guess it's like that freedom almost and liberation to go, okay, well, there's no other barriers, or there's, you know, this is the last thing I do, this is what I want to do, I guess, you know, for some people. So
and you know what, Gwen, I think you and I know that the secret is that you can have that anytime you want it. You don't have to wait to go through a crisis to have that feeling. But often people don't, they don't feel connected with that. Exactly. And it is the crisis that gives them that permission. But like, that would be my message to anyone, is don't wait until you have cancer to make the art you want to make. Like, that would be my message to anybody, is like, you can do that. If you want to go out and make some glass, no one's going to stop you. Like, you have to go do it. Find your friend, the glassmaker, and suggest that that's a project you want to do, you know?
Yeah, thank you. And it reminds me of something else that I heard today. Like, I was at a virtual conference at the weekend with Suzanne Geistman, who she's now a spiritual teacher and a medium. She was, you might have heard of her, she was in the Navy, in the military in the US. She was actually very high up. She was, I want to say she was secretary or aide to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the military. So, you know, really up there, very left-brained, commander, following orders, all these sort of things. And then they lost her and her husband. Her daughter was killed in a freak accident in the military. And she was also pregnant at the time. And she discovered mediumship and discovered an affinity, and not just an affinity with it, but, you know, she now channels, like Abraham Hicks, she channels a consciousness called Sanyaya and so on. But she still brings in the practical aspect. She's still Suzanne, who can be the military commander or be that type of person. And she's now got this whole other aspect. And she was teaching the classes that she was teaching. And she said something very similar to what you said just now, and to the effect of, like, don't wait until your loved ones die and have to get a medium to say what you want to say to them. Say it now. And it's that same principle of what you're saying. Don't wait until the crisis point or the crunch point in life, the tragedy to happen, or the diagnosis to happen, to do the things that you do. Flip the script and flip and do them now. And I want to say it more powerfully than that. I'll be polite about it, but, you know, just F and do it, as they say.
Flip the script, flip it now. I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you can change it to F and fill in the blanks yourself. But you know, it's that inner permission, or that inner permission slip that we think, oh, well, what will so and so say, or well, you know, all the kind of fears that come up, or the judgments that we make on ourselves, and they are a story there in our script, and that's why it's called Flip the Script, because we want to just change that dynamic slightly, that script, and say, I can do it now. I don't need anyone else's permission. I don't need. Yeah, you might need some people's help. You might need funding, or you might need a grant, or you might need a community, but then you go out and you create the community, and you know, let that, you know, be the thing that let that be your legacy, if so be it, if that's what you want to do. So I'm getting on my tangent, getting on my high horse now, getting me riled up, but in a good way, you know, because it's like that, as you say, that's what I see, that's what you see. So that's, I guess, a positive side that can come out of these things, and also the positive of people watching and listening to this is like, oh yeah, I don't actually have to wait for something horrible to happen. I could actually do that thing now if I want to, in some small way or a huge way. So hopefully we're inspiring some of those kind of conversations or thoughts. So I've gone off, as I say, I go off on tangents, but the tangents are always good, but I also want to make sure that I cover some of the things. So was there any other defining moments, would you say, from that for you in terms of either your work, or has it, taken you in a new direction, or, what else has shifted for you?
Yeah, I think a big shift for me as well. So, as I mentioned, I had a lovely career. I was working as an academic. I'd worked in think tanks, and I actually had trained as a coach. And I did that all the way back in 2017. So it's been almost 10 years now. But I hadn't really been, although I'd been using those skills, I hadn't been working as a coach. And after I had my cancer experience, I was really called to reconnect with those one-on-one transformations, because as much as I really enjoyed helping people achieve large organizational transformations, or big changes in like government policy and things like that. Those are really powerful things, but they're also really abstract. And
Yeah.
I love the experience of doing one-on-one coaching, and you can really see the impact that you're having with that person in their life right there. And so that was something I was really missing. And I think I know that it really shaped the way that I chose to do my career after the cancer experience, so I have taken on a lot more of that, and I'm really, really joyful of that.
I love that, joyful, because that's it. We always want to we think joy sometimes is that far off thing, or one day I'll have have the joy of it, but actually when you can find the joy in all of these things, then that's the payoff, really, isn't it? And I totally get what you're saying about, like, it's good to be part of a think tank or a governmental initiative that's maybe helping lots of people, but at the same point you don't feel and see, and you can't sort of touch, get your hands around the transformation. And I mean, the other thing that's lovely as well is, like, yes, I love what you said about being called to do it, for one, and it being that joyful thing, and also the fact of there's that lovely ripple effect that comes, because yes, you might be working with one person, but it's never just one person, because you're impacting their family, their friends, their loved ones, the people that they work with, or they do, or all sorts of things. So have you got a story of a ripple effect that you've personally created, would you say, or one of many, I'm sure?
Well, the one that's coming to mind as we're talking about this is I was working with someone, and she was having a really hard time in her job, and she was working for a small cultural festival in Scotland. I won't be specific about the place because that would be too revealing, but but she was really strongly considering leaving her job. And I think if she had done that, it would have been very hard for them to hold the festival this year. And and she was able to say, actually, it's really important to me to assist this community with this very important thing, and to be part of this experience. And so she was able to find ways that some of the more challenging aspects because actually what we uncovered was she had this belief, because she moved into a managerial role, which was kind of new for her. And she had this belief that anytime there was a success in the team, none of the credit was hers. But anytime anything went badly, it was all her fault. And as you can imagine, that is no way to live. That's just a miserable place to be. And so we were able to find ways that she was able to readjust her thinking around that. And that was, I think, a huge contributor to her wanting to stay in the job. And I don't know that will be the role for her forever, but she was certainly committed to wanting to stay for this year and to make sure that the team was in the place it needed to be to do the festival this time. And then she can think about whether it's a place for her to remain long-term, and I think that was a real, you can see that rippling out. So.
Yeah. And it's so true as well what you say, because I'm nodding away to that, because as a former corporate manager, I've been in that position where we feel like, you feel like you're responsible for everything that goes wrong, and if it doesn't go right, all of that. I'll not even go there in terms of all the things that you feel like, but and we all do that, I suppose, to a certain degree, of like whether it's as a mum or a parent, a spouse, a friend, or whatever. That we're all the centre of our own world, so we think sometimes we take on board all the woes of the world, and it's my fault if this doesn't go right, or all of these kind of things, but we forget to give ourselves the credit for the good things as well. And it's usually those beliefs that we've really got to flip, those stories that we've really got to work on the most. But also the flip side of that is that when when you recognise your strengths, or you recognise those things that you always thought you were bad at, or that were a failing, or all these kind of terms that we use, we often find it's a strength as well, or something. Actually, there's something unique and special about that only we can do. But it takes, it takes something miraculous almost to let us see that, or to give us that perspective. So is there something like that where you've flipped an inner script or flipped a belief about yourself and seen the flip side of it, seeing the strengths or the beauty of it?
Yes, and you can see me giggling because the one that's coming to mind at the moment, and I think you're 100% right, like often our absolute worst things about us are also our biggest strengths, and so
we just can't see it for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, it's the same trait and it's just coming out in different ways at different times. So for me, I think I had a very long-standing belief about kind of responsibility and laziness, and not wanting to be seen as lazy, which of course, like, no one who goes through the process of getting a PhD is a lazy person. Like, that's just not.
No.
But in my mind, that was constantly a belief that was coming up. And it, in many ways, it drove me to achievements that I wouldn't have otherwise had if I hadn't had that belief. But I might have found it possible to achieve those things without such difficulty if I didn't have that belief. But now what it allows me to do, because especially for coaching work, it is very emotional, and it's very important that you make space for processing the things that are coming up in coaching sessions. So right before we had this recording session, I actually was like, I need to lie down and do a small yoga nidra, which is like a nap, but not really a nap.
I know exactly.
Yes. And
kind
it's
of
like a nice little,
or a letting go sort of thing, like from your toes up to your fingertips or what have you.
It's a lovely, relaxing experience. It's a nice brain refresh. It helps you retune your brainwaves. That's really
like a nervous system reset.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, I need that, because I'd had a few sessions today, and although I always love my sessions, it's also important. And in fact, as part of the coaching ethics that I subscribe to, you have to be fully present for every person. So you can't be holding on to the last session. You have to be ready for whatever's going to come up in this session. So it's like, I need a moment. I'm going to lie down. We're going to do that. And then I'll come into this moment refreshed and feeling good about life. And there's another part of me. It's like, but you could have been sending some emails. It's so lazy that you were lying on the floor. And I'm like, no, this is part of the work. And so, that I think is both a strength. And at times, I like going to the beach when I don't have any client calls, and that's fun. Sometimes I'm not as up with the emails as I should be, but that's okay.
Well, what I do is I like in similar ways. I have to move. Like movement really helps me, and so like I always go for a walk, and sometimes when I'm out on a walk, I might multitask and listen to a voice note or send a message or something like that. Sometimes I just listen to music, but like you say, that far from being lazy, that's the most necessary thing to do, because like you say, you've got to replenish yourself, especially when you're holding space for deep transformations or really, really personal things, especially if you are working with people, like you say, who are dealing with cancer and things as well, and they're going through that roller coaster and thing, and then you've got to ride that with them to a certain degree. You've got to fill your own cup, and going back to the aeroplane analogy, sort of thing, like checking the airplane, whatever, you've got to put your own mask on first. So whether it's yoga nidra, whether it's going out for a walk, whether it's some people might dive in an ice bath. Personally speaking, I'll never do that. I'll go outside and sunbathe. I'll leave the ice bath to other people, but whatever works for you, and that can be different on any given day as well. Some days you're like, oh no, I just need to switch off and whatever, it's different in every day. But as long as you recognize what you need and you fill your own cup, and you kind of do something for you, so that you can then do something for other people. Because like you say as well, especially if we have that belief, and it's often to do with ADHD or these kind of things, where we haven't even maybe recognized that's part of who we are. It's essential to who we are. If somebody's always telling us that that's wrong, or we've been given that belief throughout our life of that way of being is lazy, or it's whatever that is, that's insidious and things. So we've got to work hard to flip that script and to overcome. And it comes down to the self-acceptance and the self-love, and the realizing that finding those moments of joy or those moments of pleasure, that's not selfish, or that's not lazy. That's actually, we need that, and that's more powerful for your clients. If you're going into a session having done that, then you going in feeling frazzled and carrying, so and so from the previous session, and not being present for them. You've got to be present for yourself to then do that, to then have that ripple effect, or the butterfly effect that we want to have you know, and it's kind of going back to when you said about the working with one or two people rather than the big things. Actually, you know, that butterfly effect, when the butterfly flaps its wings, somebody over here in South America gains and benefits too. So it's like, you know, we need to do that, and we need to tend to ourselves. And I kind of want to go on that analogy now and go and like feed on some nectar or whatever it is that butterflies do. We need to find our own nectar, and do that. As I say, my mind starts working in mysterious ways and goes off on all sorts of tangents. But again, because it's so necessary, we so need to do that. I want to ask a big question now. Who have you become because of that experience?
Ooh, who have I become as a result of that? Do you know, I think I have become someone who is less afraid of taking risks. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a psychologist who works with cancer patients as well. And I was saying, is that unusual? And he said, no, actually, I think it's pretty common that people become more risk tolerant than they were before.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not saying I would take really dangerous risks, but I've also been less afraid of doing things like taking on more coaching and having a less, 9-to-5 job. Although I still do work part-time at the university, and I'm still doing some of those like larger projects, which I really enjoy the variety of, having that balance between.
I was going to say, that sounds like that fills your cup, having a bit of heat, a bit of this and a bit of that. That's your version of nectar.
Yeah, exactly. And I really love having that balance between many different kinds of things, you know, but I think I wouldn't have had the bravery to do that before. And now it's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know? And that feels really empowering.
Yeah, and it's like that, you need it. So it's like, you know, do it for yourself. And bringing it back to almost full circle, you said at the beginning, I had been living my best life, you know, in the glamorous job and all these sort of things flying all over the world. What does living your best life mean to you now, and how has that shifted and changed?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, I loved that job, the corporate job that I had, the think tank job, but it was exhausting. I mean, you know, it was probably 2 or 3 weekends of travel at least every month, and it was fun. But you know, and then you'd be like on client calls from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. Like it was a heavy job, and success doesn't look like that to me anymore. Though I'm very glad that I did. And I made some wonderful connections, and I had some really interesting conversations and learned a huge amount. Success wouldn't look like that to me now. You know, I wouldn't want to be working to that level to feel like I was a success. You know, I don't need that amount of hustle in my life anymore. And I think part of what success looks like to me is to see that transformation happening with my clients is a huge impact for me. You know, and if I wasn't seeing, then that would change what I wanted to do for work. And I think as well, the other thing that changed a lot for me is making more space for my own creative practice and taking my own creative practice more seriously. So I love creative writing as a thing that I do because it brings me joy, but I also want to take it more seriously. And I have been pitching a lot more of short stories and, you know, essays and things like that. So, and been less afraid to do that, you know, because again, it's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? All they can say is no, you know, and they'll never say yes unless I try and pitch. So, yeah.
And I love that. You're inspiring me because like creative writing is one of those things, I think, not just I think, I know that I do like journaling and so on for me, and I'm like, I want to write a book, or I'm doing that in this way, and I'm doing, and again, it's one of those kind of almost like one day things, and it's like, just do it now, even if it is in a small way or whatever. Do it for the fun of it, or do it just because you want to do it. Don't wait for the whatever, all the conditions to be right, or the, like you say, the dramatic crisis point to happen, to give yourself the permission. It's like, do it now, and then, you know, what you like say, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? How much fun can it be? Kind of thing. No flipping the script. It's like,
and you know what? It's like, well, maybe nobody will ever pick up. You know, I also have written a book about the experience of doing the glass, and you know, I've been pitching that around to agents, and maybe nobody will ever pick that up. But I know in my heart that it's a damn fine piece of writing, and I'm really proud of it. So you know, even if it never goes anywhere, I'm really proud of having written it. So.
Yeah, and that's just something that you've done for yourself.
Yeah.
And that in itself is an achievement, or something like that, and you say is a fresh definition of success, isn't it? And you've got to sometimes, like the reason I'm doing the work that I'm doing now is because as a corporate manager, I had a lot of stress, and I started on like my spiritual journey and the things. And it was just to be able to get through the day and to be able to sleep at night and not be stressed to the max, because I know I wasn't doing the job I wanted to do because of all those things. But now I'm like, oh, now I'm doing the job I always wanted to do because of those things. So I'm grateful to it. So, you know, there's a similarity. And one of the questions was success. What does success look and feel like now? I think we've covered that one for sure, and hopefully given planting some seeds in other people's minds of like, oh yeah, well, success to me would be this, or what would bring me joy, and when we can, I guess, wake up in the morning and ask ourselves those questions and prioritize those things, that's living your best life, or that's success, is being like, well, I'm allowed to do what I want to do, and it's not to hell with anybody else. It's like, everybody else come with me, like everybody else do that too. And it's kind of like when we give ourselves permission.
And it's also okay for that to change. You know, it's okay for those things. If you're like, oh, I don't love this anymore, or this doesn't bring me as much joy as it did. You know, the fact that I'm not like in what many people would consider a high flying role and influential and powerful. I loved that when I had it, and then I was ready to not have that anymore. And it's okay to say, actually, I don't love the shape of this. This is not how I live my life anymore.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing. I much rather people say that now than, as you say, wait until that old kind of chestnut of like on the deathbed, or like nobody says I wish I'd spent more time at the office or flying around the world in planes, whatever, you know. So we want to do that now and be able to say, well, I had a good life and I did what I wanted to do, and I achieved things, and I wrote the book, even if it was only ever for me, I wrote it anyway.
I mean, so just to be clear, I'm really hoping that the book will be for many, many other people as well.
Of course.
But even if it isn't, I'm proud of having written it.
Yeah, well, even perhaps by this conversation, there'll be some people that go, oh, I'd like to read that book. So let's take that intention now and plant that seed, and let's see what happens, because that's how the magic happens. So I was going to wrap up the conversation to say, if you could help someone listening today, and hopefully we have already, but if you could help one person flip the script on one belief that's holding them back, and or one more belief, let's say, because I think we've done a few already, what would you want them to know?
I think it's what I said earlier, which is like, don't wait for the crisis to happen to pursue that little voice in the back of your mind that's saying, I want this thing. You know, what is it that you're waiting for? Like, what kind of permission do you think you need? And what would you do right now if you knew that you had that permission already?
Yeah, if there was no barriers, what would be the first thing that you would do, and do it in some small way. Take one small step towards it today, whatever that might be. So thank you. I'd love to leave it kind of on that, and just say and hope that, and if you're watching this, or when you're watching this, give us a hashtag replay and let both of us know, or get in touch with us and say, actually, you inspired me to do this, and here's the small step I took, or here's the courageous step I took, bringing it back to the courage and the courage that we started off with, from the heart as well. So that's our intention for anyone watching this, that they take one sort of small step, or might be a big step for mankind, who knows. So on that note, is there how can people find you if they're interested to find out about your book, or to find out about your projects, and maybe to work with you, or to create with you, or anything else? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So the best way is to reach out to me through my website, which is caitlinmcdonald.com. And if they want to see more about Picture Your Poisons, then the website for that is pictureyourpoisons.art. So either of those will find me.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. So thanks again for watching this episode of the Flip the Script podcast. There will be much more coming soon. I've got a waiting list, as I think I said earlier, of people lining up to do those now, which is very exciting. And actually, if you've been inspired and you think, oh, I've got a story on those lines that Gwenne might be interested in, then please do get in touch with me about that as well, because I'd love to help you share your story. There's always more that unfolds and flows from us doing that as well as the beautiful ripple effect, as I say, of us doing that. Then who knows what might unfold for you. So thank you so much, and I'll see you all again soon.